Ryan, Hunter, and George, and we're doing our taking our second attempt at doing a coaching circle online. So we'll jump right into it. This is actually week 3, I think, for the U.Lab 2.0 hub, and we're doing tonight's presentation on co-sensing. Let me
slide the mouse over to the right. Yeah, that should be really quick. There we go.
Okay. So this is the, we modified this format for tonight's presentation, but using the case clinic format that's in the U.Lab course. And so we'll just be going through this really for now and in about the next 25 minutes or so. This first section here is the reflective overview. Hunter and I are actually co-moderating tonight as case givers, and so that will basically 30 minutes through here to take us to the stillness, and we're only recording this evening the first section here of the case clinic. So this is just the general outline, and you'll see we're really just talking about this portion here, the first 2 points. Clever, huh? This is me over here. George is actually on the right here, and and so we've been working together with the U.Lab, U.Lab 1.0 initially back in January, and so this is a second go around too in terms of U.Lab 2.0. One of the most fundamental underlying principles of the Theory U was stated in the introduction to Leading from the Emergent Future, Otto Scharmer and Katrin's book. The quality of results produced by any system depends on the quality of awareness from which people in the system operate. And so the U journey is really shared collective experience in that regard by practitioners. And as tonight's, because I'm going to include last week's parts of last week's presentation as a review, and so we'll jump right into that. But we're kind of focusing tonight on step 3, which is right here. But what you see here in over the course of the next 5 weeks or so is the U journey, and so we're actually have made the commitment and done this once before back in January and February, and working our way through a second time. So in that map I just gave you, step 1 entails the challenge of facing a design, strategic, or innovation challenge, and ask the question, what is the design, strategic, or innovation challenge that we're currently facing? Step 2 entails convening a core team and strategic, as a strategic microcosm of the whole system. This begins to involve stakeholders, and the question here is, how might others view the current current situation. Step 3 entails taking your hub, your collective group, and exploring the issue in depth. And the question here is what future are we trying to create? So in review of last week's case clinic, we threw out what are likely, for those that may not have or come from an integral background, a few new terms, and we had presented them here within the context of Dustin DePerna's working model from a recent book that he just published, Streams of Wisdom. And so the three terms that are utilized at times are structure stages, and you can see that over here. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. State stages, which are also referred to by DePerna and others as vantage point. That's gross, subtle, causal, witness, and non-dual, at least as DePerna presents it. And then just states of consciousness. Used the example, I believe, last week of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep as being three states that are very common. And we presented them in relation to the vantage point or stages of awakening. This image that I've had created as a composite from a number of different thought leaders' work, and just kind of showing here and suggesting quite honestly that the U journey it perhaps is best envisioned as a journey involving stages, which would be subjective to the individual. The collective, although these are shared as well in respect to conscious experience, but that the self is orienting itself to the world in relation to others in subjectively in something like this, perhaps. Okay, and then this is kind of a translation of the U as Otto and the Presidency Institute would present it in relation to the matrix, although these Otto tends to utilize this in respect to attention, both as conversing and listening tend to be the two kind of primary functions that he focuses on. But I like this that it fills it out a little bit more by including organizing at the macro level and coordinating at the mundo level, but then at these four levels of operating system. And he had really done that leading from the emerging future. There was quite a bit in the book about how these respective operating systems interrelate with one another. Really very important if you're aspiring to do any work in the way of design, and as we are, and we'll hopefully you'll get a sense in respect to community relations and community focus of how these various operating systems or level of operating systems translate into actuality. So diving right into the reflective overview, we look at what the current situation is. And so this, the case clinic, you know, the initial question is, what key challenge or question are we up against? And what I've included here was one of the closing comments from an article, blog article that I wrote and published the latter part of December, just prior to U.Lab 1.0 in January. And we actually went to a meeting of the city council and presented, issued a press release, and actually issued a challenge for local leaders. But and here's the link for the article if anyone's so inclined. But the closing, one of the closing comments was, consequently, and from an evolutionary perspective, although it remains unclear what the future holds in terms of humanity's unfolding narrative, it's fairly evident at this juncture that doing nothing other than remaining subject to the imposition of a new world order's centralized control, for-profit, debt-driven operating system, and the duplicitous political machinery won't adequately secure a global citizenry's well-being.
So we spent some time, as Brian had mentioned, working with U.Lab 1.0, and as we moved through that process, we had found that it became difficult to try and address these situations even within our small group because of the amount of complexity that there actually is. As you can see in the image here, you're encouraged within the U.Lab to step out of your own bubble into new worlds to connect and empathize with others. So we actually took that to heart and attempted an exercise that would capture that. We got together a group of individuals who are active participants within Roanoke as members of nonprofits and social organizations and other groups that are working for change in the area in various forms, particularly as it related to agriculture. But for the point of this presentation, I'd like to focus more on how that translates to economic activities, and particularly agriculture as a primary, and the secondary activities which come directly after primaries. Do you want to?
Right. Well, yeah. And I want to add just one thing to that. Here in Southwest Virginia, the magazine Roanoke Business just recently, and I didn't know this, but apparently agriculture here in Virginia is the second largest industry in the state. So, and I think as we go through the presentation, you'll get a better idea of how within a whole system kind of approach that the element of food or local food seems just to be pretty prominent.
So in convening that group of stakeholders, we attempted to share what we at the time saw as kind of the field that existed within Roanoke, particularly as that related to a lot of the efforts that were going on. So three of the points that came from that presentation. First is that many of Roanoke's best concerted efforts positively impacting the community's health and well-being are conducted through local nonprofits. But moving from that, unfortunately, the conventional working of 501c3 structures may actually constrict the organizations themselves, their capacity to contribute to the community. And we had a number of individuals represented who kind of shook their heads at this and had stories to tell about how, while they were a 501c3, their ability to, as you can see in the third point, their need to rely on external funds kind of ended up misdirecting their efforts and kind of compromising the overall effectiveness. And those individuals felt stuck in a place where they were not able to perceive a different way of operating in order to both achieve the goals that they directly had set out to do and to have a wider positive impact on the community.
So consequently, and as a result of working together through U.Lab 1.0, we put together a working prototype and started some organizational structure in terms of just envisioning what organizational approach might we take that would kind of best fit our what we imagine our service being to particularly the nonprofit sector as contributing to the overall well-being of the community at large. And so we kind of came up with a working mission statement to the effect that we envision and subsequently propose adopting whole system approaches to vitalize the city's socioeconomic well-being by innovating designs in community wealth and building. And that kind of emerged from both Hunter and my background and shared appreciation for sustainability and sustainability practice and theory, but you know, going into integral thought and theory. So basically taking what was good sustainability theory and expanding it a bit into integral practice. So given that mission, we've subsequently adopted an organizational learning approach, which of course is consistent with what Otto Scharmer and his team, Peter Singe, are doing at MIT in learning organization or organizational learning. And that entire process then has been and is being informed by our work together. This was a slide presentation. Hunter was referring to it earlier that we did back in May, I think, the first part of May. It was actually Hunter had taken the initiative of a group of local individuals, pretty diversified group of people that had expressed an interest in what we were doing with the U.Lab and
particularly as it related to, as we expressed it at the time, social justice, looking at that as it expresses itself through food insecurity in the Roanoke Valley. It's a large issue that most people here who are aware of the political workings have a good awareness that there is a huge issue with food insecurity, and it's best understood through our school system where close to 67% roughly of students in our schools have free lunches because their families can not otherwise afford, and that's money from, as you can see, the workings in a larger system. That's money that comes from the federal government to help. Originally, the schools pay for it, and then the federal government reimburses it. But most of that money then, that just came into the community at the federal level, immediately then proceeds to leave the community because most of the food that we have in our school systems is not produced locally, which is unfortunate because that would be a great means of Roanoke helping to meaningfully address the issue of food security as opposed to just
basically school food, breakfast and lunches has both are kind of outsourced to corporate entities who, and so the underlying issue is one of quality and nutrition and the dollar, and it's something that there is, as Hunter alluded to, there's a great deal of awareness or sensitivity to that amongst community members. We'll touch on that here in a little more in just a minute. I'm kind of watching the clock here.
So how that kind of relates, though, as we mentioned, with the production of food, it's considered a primary economic activity. Which is defined roughly as the extraction or harvesting of products from the earth. Those types of activities and creating them within a community typically don't require much capital investment either. So it's kind of there's kind of an appeal to us as community members who don't wield the large power of the current system in which we live to see a lot of potential there for us to act and have a positive impact, and from that also explore secondary economic sectors, which is the production of finished goods, such as manufacturing, processing, or construction, which are dependent upon your primary economic sectors. So a healthy economy might be reflected by a strong primary base of activities that produces goods that are then funneled, that are used directly, and then further funneled into secondary, which are then later consumed by individuals or moved throughout the community in order to maintain and generate wealth, or even moved outside of the community. Then, of course, there's the other issues which we're all very familiar, or the other sectors we're familiar with: tertiary, which is the service industry, sales, transportation, distribution, insurance, banking, law, all important. But if there's a disconnect between primary, secondary, and tertiary, tertiary is unsustainable. And the same goes for quaternary, which is the intellectual pursuits, education, IT, scientific research, and the like.
Basically, what we're looking at here in kind of a whole systems way, then, as Hunter is saying, is looking at the gaps that are created between these different operating systems, and looking at them in a way, is it possible for us to envision some form of innovation and enact that innovation in terms of designing or modifying ecosystems, and there again, that goes back to our shared understanding of sustainability. We've kind of developed over the last few years. So in looking, so that's kind of addresses the stakeholder section. In moving to intention and the question, what future are we trying to create? Our relationship to community stakeholders has been facilitated through ongoing events like a recent education town hall meeting that was coordinated by Virginia delegate Sam Razul and co-hosted by Virginia and Roanoke Education Associations. And so that was just about a week and a half ago that kind of fairly recently elected Sam Razul and actually State Senator John Edwards had hosted this community event that was really presented as they served dinner and as a local forum. And just within the last couple of days, then Sam Razul had and put together a PDF document that was essentially a report with all of the dialogue, kind of reflecting the dialogue and conversation of the evening. So this was very, very broad in relation to community, and interesting that community members are coming together and saying, what can we do and how do we go about doing it to shape a community that is higher quality of, happiness and well-being. And education, kind of the institutions, education and church to some extent, really being at the center of that kind of that movement. So.
You go back one slide. Just drawing attention, Brian's focusing here on education, which appears at the quaternary or the 4.0 operating systems, and as that translates to theory U, kind of moving down, none of these moves to different operating systems are able to disassociate themselves from the previous operating systems. And that's why it's important within this design, or looking at design, to really have.
Four does, at least potentially. I mean, that and Sharma, in relation to integral thought and theory, has proposed that. He sees that he sees this level 4 at least as a potential of being significantly different in the regard that these previous don't interface necessarily very well with each other. But this
I guess just drawing the distinction there, though, between being different and disassociating themselves, at least in relation to, as you can see on this slide, how quaternary is dependent upon the ability of primary and secondary and tertiary to provide a structure in which it can exist.
Then moving into our learning threshold, what do we need to let go of? What do we need to learn? And I'd summarize that in preparation here of the slide and this part of the presentation, that we need to afford community stakeholders an opportunity to contribute their input in shaping our organizational agenda and approach. And kind of thinking here in the general kind of dysfunction of capitalism that we're seeing is that the issue, or the underlying issue or problem with that, is really, we talked about this the other night over dinner, is a devaluation of the human input. I mean, to the point of ignoring the human input in a capitalist system in favor of commodifying everything. And so when you do that, it doesn't bode well for the quality of experience, or the difference that the quality of attention in practice has on informing the design of an ecosystem, for example. So that's really what we're endeavoring to explore in the collective work with between and relationship between ourselves and community members, really of all stripes. So that's really the completion of that initial section of the case clinic. So I'm going to go ahead and take us off the air